Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Politics Today, and in this programme we'll be asking, is the Metropolitan Police Force enforcing no-go zones for Jewish people? And this programme today I'm joined by Pastor Tim Gutmann from Christian Action Against Anti-Semitism, together with Phil Lewis, representing the Christian Friends of the Israeli Communities in the UK. So gentlemen, warm welcome to the programme, and both of you are veterans on today's subject when it comes to standing and demonstrating your love and support for Israel and the Jewish people. So thank you both. I'll start off with you, Tim. Firstly, welcome back, and thank you and Hayley and your family for the courageous stand and leadership that you are showing at this time, particularly since the horrific events of October the 7th, to stand in that gap and to show the Jewish community in this country and to Israel that they're not alone, and to be a voice for Israel at this time, a Christian voice. Share with us your thoughts on this political story that has been dominating our headlines over the last few days. The footage has emerged showing that a Met police officer was telling Gideon Falter, who's heads up the campaign against anti-Semitism and is a leading member of the Jewish community, was told that he was openly Jewish and not to walk past the pro-Palestinian march. What do you make of the reaction of the Metropolitan Police Force to the Jewish people, particularly as it relates to these Palestinian hate marches?
Yeah, this is ongoing. Actually, I remember doing a rally that Gideon's organisation organised outside Scotland Yard. This was in the early days, I think October even, and they were challenging the police's dealing with these marches back then, saying there was a two-tier system going on. It seems like the police are taking sides, and it feels unsafe for Jewish people. And they've been saying that, actually, the Jewish community have been saying for months, you know, these are no-go zones. London is a no-go zone, and they feel unsafe. And then obviously Gideon wants to highlight this, and he's gone to London to these marches, and he's been told his presence is a provocation, which is outrageous, because then you're seeing reactions from the anti-Israel brigade saying, well, Gideon set that up, that missing the point entirely, that being openly Jewish, as the policeman said, should never be a provocation. The Jewish people should always feel safe in our city, and you know, previously did do for centuries, and it's a really sad and telling state that we're in. But the Met Police have been told time and time again by Jewish community leaders and representatives, we feel unsafe, it seems like you've taken sides, and London is a no-go zone, and all of this highlighted that.
Absolutely. And Phil, it's great to have you on the programme, and I really want to commend you and your wonderful wife, Bren, for your love and support for Israel and the Jewish community. So back in about 2009, 2010, you both would travel from your home just outside of Cardiff in South Wales, drive all the way up to London to support the Jewish community when we saw the big protest against the Israeli store Ahava that produced those wonderful Dead Sea beauty products. And you were there faithfully, week in, week out, showing your love and support. So what do you make of this story, and particularly the extent that these pro-Palestinian hate marches have grown in central London?
Well, firstly, nothing's changed from 2010, 2011. Back then there were only tens of people. Today there are tens of thousands, simply because it wasn't dealt with back in 2010. And I remember we would come up, and as we approached, I think it was Monmouth Street, Covent Garden, you had butterflies. We all felt butterflies. We just didn't want to be there, but knew that we had to be there. So what happened then was, for the next 2 hours, there were chants such as Ahava mud, Palestinian blood. The Israeli flag was desecrated, and not long after, the shop was closed. The Ahava shop had to close. And it took me back a little bit to another era where there were Nuremberg laws, again to do with blood. Nazi flag was first flown in 1935, and then the first Jewish shop was closed in 1935. But what I'm trying to get to is, I said earlier on, nothing's changed. It was the aftermath that was frightening. After 1935, a few months later, the Jews were hidden. Similarly, in 2012, a few months after the Harvard shop closed, the Jews were hidden. Recently, the Jews have been sort of disappeared. Don't look Jewish, please. Just disappear, just go away. And similarly, in Berlin, a few months later, the Jews were disappeared. Now, what next? We know that what happened in the early 40s, there was a final solution. And similarly in Britain, there's a two-state solution. And there's no difference between the two, because with the two-state solution, what most people don't know is that both Palestinian charters, that i.e. Hamas and Fatah, call for Israel's total destruction. So it's the aftermath. If it had been dealt with in 2010, 2011, maybe we wouldn't be at this place today. And that's the problem. And we have to ask ourselves, why wasn't it dealt with?
And it's getting worse as well.
And that's a very important question. That's what we're trying to address on this programme. Yes, had the Metropolitan Police Force, had our government taken seriously the rise of Jew hatred back then, and of course then we saw an explosion in 2014 with Israel's military operation against Hamas in Gaza then, which we saw on the streets of London. But now this is on a totally different scale altogether. Now, we've seen, haven't we, Tim, that we've seen these Palestinian marches take place, or rallies, ever since October the 7th, even before the IDF actually launched its military operation into Gaza, in demonstrating support for the Palestinian cause. We've heard chants of genocide being chanted on our streets week in, week out. And also seems that this is becoming a bigger problem, and the police can't seem to control it. I think what Gideon Falter tried to show and highlight was the fact that the police are not doing anything to counter the extremism, to counter the anti-Jewish slurs that were made against him. And he wanted to highlight the problem that as a Jewish person, he can't walk into central London while these Palestinian hate fests go on. Just share with us your thoughts about the police and their approach to the big Palestinian hate marches that we've seen ever since October the 7th.
Yeah, I remember us discussing the police on a programme we did a few months ago, and there was frustration there actually at the approach. And it seems to be appeasement and hoping this thing will just go away and hoping it doesn't escalate. I think they are afraid of the numbers, the sheer numbers, probably the violence that is capable. But week in, week out, Jewish people have been saying, this chant is genocidal. We've been showing, we've shown on our Instagram pages and social medias, there are placards that are anti-Semitic, blatantly, blood libels, things like this, targeting Jewish people, not even targeting Israel. And this has been going week on, week out, and the police have been made aware of this, but they keep allowing these marches, first of all. And secondly, we're seeing now that it seems to be that the policy is not just appeasing, but it's to stop Jewish people or those who are for Israel from being anywhere near the marches, when actually what the police should be doing is making it safe for the lawful to protect them from the violent. That is what our police should be doing. They shouldn't be appeasing the violent and threatening to arrest the lawful. Now, I've been to many Jewish-led rallies and counter-protests.
You've organised some as well.
We've organised, Christian ones, because we want the Jewish people to know this isn't just for you to do alone. Anti-Semitism is all of our problem. And actually, we said this earlier, didn't we? That actually the message needs to be, we need to stand with the Jewish people, because it won't stop with the Jewish people. They will come. Whatever this spirit is, and we know what it is, it will come for the rest of us. I mean, we saw a priest in Australia stabbed last weekend. Now, this Jewish-led protests and rallies are always peaceful. You never hear anti-Palestinian chants. You never hear any hate to anyone. You just hear a message of love. We're, loving their hostages, singing the anthem, and just positive message. They are the lawful, and they are the peaceful. They should be protected. The Jewish community should be protected. And actually, it says where we're at as a nation, because how you treat your Jewish people shows you where you're at morally, and it is frightening. This is like, I've never seen, and I've been involved in this kind of ministry, if you like, for 10, 15 years, and it's getting worse. 2021 was bad. You remember this car with their flags and their chants through the Jewish neighborhood? Well, this time it seems thank you for saying this, it feels like the 1930s in Germany, and that's what Jewish people are telling us.
Yeah. And Phil, the Sunday Times reports that Gideon Falter received abuse from the Palestinian marchers. I think they called him, according to his own accounts, they called him scum, they called him a Nazi because he was visibly Jewish, because he wore the skull cap on his head. Showed us how the Metropolitan Police are allowing these Palestinian hate marches to take place. That it's literally fueling anti-Semitism or Jew hatred. It's fueling extremism. We're seeing an incitement to terrorism and incitement to hatred and the glorification of terrorism as well. What does Mark Rowley have to do in order to stop this? And why does it look like Sir Mark Rowley is actually cowering to the mob?
The thing is, this mob is there's something different. We've had people who hate before, but these go beyond the pale. They're frightening. They kill in strange and cruel ways. They will perhaps try to find out where you live. They will try to get at your family. So as far as Mark Rowley is concerned, it's a horrible job. I wouldn't want it. But I don't think this mob is a problem, but it's not the problem. I think the problem comes from the men in suits who speak out of both sides of their mouth. For example, we've got the de facto Palestinian representative in Britain, Hussam Zomlot, who represents a regime that calls for Israel's total destruction, and also they pay people who have killed Jewish men, women, children, and babies. And he is behind this, I think. He stirs them up. But what is frightening that most of our political leaders can't wait to be photographed with him. And this two-state solution, which I alluded to earlier on, is the same as a final solution is the problem. The whole world is calling for the two-state solution. But this mob is just reacting to what our political leaders are endorsing, a two-state solution, a final solution, the total destruction of the Jewish people. So yes, the police commissioner should do something, but whereas before they had to deal with a few, now they have to deal with tens of thousands, and worldwide it's hundreds of thousands. And if I were in their boots, I would be scared, because we haven't seen the like of this lot before. We're at a tipping point. In fact, perhaps we're over the edge, I don't know. But we have to go to the root of the problem as to why nothing has been done. And I don't think we all have our ideas. I think we have to sharpen our ideas to get our thoughts to root out the problem of anti-Semitism.
Personally, I think Sir Mark Rowley isn't capable of dealing with this. I think he's shown that time and time again, and I would agree with, for example, Suella Braverman, who says he should step down. I think as well, the police answer to the mayor, and I think he has to answer questions as to why these marches are being allowed. You've made your point, whatever it was. And now this is just, like you said, this is a hate fest. And as well, why aren't we investigating who's organising these marches? Like you said, there are terrorists living in this country. Fact. And they've been pictured with in the same row of marchers as Jeremy Corbyn, politicians like this. And I think Sir Mark Rowley isn't up to the task. He's been challenged time and time again, and time it seems to be his message is, right, I hear you, I don't really care, I'm going to keep doing it this way, and I'm going to keep appeasing the mob.
Yeah, but isn't that the great danger in this one, is that the Islamists are using the Palestinian cause as a means to kind of mobilise and stretch their political muscle and show that they are a political force to be reckoned with, and that's the major problem. So it's not only the fact that we're seeing this combination of the hard left together with the Islamists joining forces, the kind of red-green brigade, that when it comes down to actual values have absolutely nothing in common apart from the hatred of Israel and the Jewish people. And so there is that kind of failure to actually recognise that our democracy is being subverted as well, that you can't continue to allow incitement of hatred and intimidation and threats made against our Jewish community without paying a price. And it looks like our commissioner doesn't fully understand what Jew hatred is or its historical impact it's had on societies when it goes unchallenged. And as Phil was saying, we have reached the tipping point now, and that if our government and our police don't stand up to the mark and try and counter this, then our very democracy becomes threatened. So do you think the Met are actually fearful of the Islamists, and this is why they are cowering to the Islamist mob that we see sadly on our streets of London and other major cities throughout the UK?
Well, certainly I would say the Commissioner is. I've spoken to police officers on the street. Now, some of them have voiced their frustration at their hands being tied because the police know how, I mean, the police are great. When you speak to individual police, you know, they know how to police. They know how to police other events. For example, if they were football fans, they know how to put the riot gear on, and they know how to kettle protesters, and they could easily do this. Now, what is going on here is to do with a particular, like you said, there is an Islamist, I think, agenda, and I think there was an appeasement there. Whatever the training the Met have had or Sir Mark Rowley's had, I don't think they've made the training balance between how you treat the Jewish community, for example, who seem to be fair game or scapegoats, who seem to be ignored, when there's this overzealous attempt to appease the Islamists. Now, we saw in the early days of these marches, for example, Islamists taking this opportunity and organising these mass prayer events or whatever, at Westminster Abbey, for example. Now, you could imagine what would happen if we tried to organise a prayer meeting at a mosque in Mecca or whatever. I mean, this is supposed to be a Christian country. I don't think the police should be allowing this kind of thing. And I think, you know, the agenda, the appeasement, I think the police need to come in robust and hard. Personally, I think the marches should have been banned. And I think, you know, that's down to Prime Minister, maybe James Cleverly, to say, you made your point, this is costing too much money to the taxpayer, this is upsetting and causing distress to the Jewish community, and that is not who we are as Britain. But actually the marches have been allowed, so let the police police. Individual policemen are not afraid. They want to police. Some of them are frustrated. Now, some of them, I know that they are outnumbered. There's like 5 policemen, and you see them surrounded by thousands and thousands of people. Whatever the reason, I think a new commissioner, I think obviously the mayor needs to ask questions, and I think the Home Secretary needs to get involved, and even Sunak just step in and say, right, we've got to do something about this.
I mean, Suella Braverman said pretty much the same thing and criticised Sir Mark Rowley and said he should go, and then in the end she ended up getting the sack, and now we're seeing a few months later this is now at Rishi Sunak's doorstep and he has to deal with it. I just want to read a quote if I can, Phil. This is from the Police Minister, Chris Phillip, who shares his concerns, and he said, no one should be told their religion is provocative, nor an innocent person threatened with an arrest solely because of someone else's anticipated unreasonable action. It seems our government understand this, and our ministers of state understand the dangers of what's going on. But sadly, it looks like it's not the fact that the police have a problem, it's actually the policies that the police are having to put into place to actually manage these hate marches that's the problem.
Yeah, I don't quite get it that the police have to put their necks on the line. They don't have the political backup because whichever party you look at, they are all, as I say, I'll go back to this point because it's important, that they all want to be seen with Hussam Zomlot. He's a rabid anti-Semite. And it's not just Jeremy Corbyn, because he's been sidelined. He's still a problem, I agree. But all the leaders, Scotland, England, Wales, they all want to be photographed with this guy. Now, why is that? Why do they want to be seen with him? Simply because he, as I said, represents this regime that wants the elimination, obliteration of the Jewish people. So the police know this. They know what their political masters are thinking. So really, it's not up to them. It's up to the politicians to say and to distance themselves from these people, but they won't do it. It's been around for such a long, long time. I think really we go back even to the 1920s, where we had a mandate and we betrayed that mandate. Our mandate was to allow the Jews unrestricted access to Israel. We did the opposite. In fact, just in 1939, we closed the door to Israel. It's never been any different. The Labour Party, anti-Semitism birthed the Labour Party. I'm from Merthyr Tydfil, and the first MP, Keir Hardie, Labour and Labour's first leader, was an anti-Semite, and nothing has changed and nothing will change. On a personal level, I would like the Jews to go home. I feel frightened for them. It keeps you awake at night. At least if they went home, they would not have to hide.
Yep.
They wouldn't be disappeared.
But surely that's their choice. If you ask a Jewish person in this country, they consider themselves British and also Jewish as well. And we should be doing everything we can to make the Jewish community safe so they don't have to make those decisions.
Mm-hmm. But they're not safe.
But this is why, for example, while we still live in a democracy, while we still have freedom of speech, while we still can elect our political representatives, we have to ensure that our government acts to actually protect the Jewish community. By all accounts, it seems like our government is, but there's a major problem in terms of the way that London is governed, and also the way that the police are handling the situation. And I just read a quote from you, Tim, and this is actually from Sir Mark Rowley, as quoted in the Sunday Times, being interviewed on Sunday. These are the comments he made in his defence. He said, "We absolutely understand how vulnerable Jewish and Muslim Londoners feel since the terror attacks on Israel. Some of our actions have increased this concern. I personally reiterate our apology from early in the week," and now he's saying that he wants to meet the representatives of the Jewish community here to bring reassurance to them. Why didn't he do that in the aftermath of October the 7th? Also, hasn't acknowledged the fact that Jew hatred now is a pandemic level in this country, that we haven't seen as many recorded instances of Jew hatred as we have today. It's breaking all records and is comparable to that of Europe in the 1930s and 40s. The fact that he wants to equate both Jewish concerns and Muslim concerns, when fundamentally it's the Islamists that are perpetuating this hatred and violence against the Jewish community, that he just wants to put them in the same basket. Your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. This equivalation, and I mean, these are unprecedented times to be Jewish. And just on what you said, if the Jewish people felt the need to leave and go home, as you say, to Israel, I would say Britain is finished, because morally and spiritually, if that's where we're at, I would want to go with them. I would say, I would do my best to get to Israel, because we are done for. There is always a spiritual implication. But yeah, Sir Mark Rowley has shown a complete lack of understanding, empathy with the Jewish community. These meetings should have been had a long time ago. He was challenged by Jewish leaders and community boards and bodies about these protests and about the Met's approach and response. For months, this has been going on, and it seems like it would appear to me, now I don't want to judge what's going on in his head, it would appear to me he didn't show much care or concern, and now, when the Met are embarrassed and when these
and his job's on the line.
And when his job's on the line, suddenly we get this response. Like I said, personally, I mean, sometimes it feels hopeless. For example, politically in this country, whoever we vote for, it seems like Labour's going to get in. Seems like we're going to get the same mayor, and it seems like Sir Mark Rowley's never going to go, and it seems hopeless. So I always say, as a pastor, I'll say, okay, it's never hopeless because we've always got prayer, and that's what Christians need to do. And at this time as well, Christians really need learn from the 1930s and learn from largely Christian inaction, silence, complicity, and say we're not going to be silent, we need to be vocal, we need to be active. But I would put not much hope in politics, I would put a lot more hope in prayer and Christian action, and I would say Sir Mark Rowley has demonstrated a lack of concern for the Jewish community. This is what Suella Braverman said. It said, you've taken sides. Huge statement. He's taken sides with essentially this Islamist agenda.
Yeah. And we've got less than 2 minutes left of the programme. So Phil, just sum up what it's like to actually go to these demonstrations and show your Christian love and support to Israel and the Jewish community, and how by making Jewish friends and making Jewish people feel they're not alone is such a powerful message, especially at this time.
Yeah, there's no better cause than to stand with his people. And I agree with Tim, this is a spiritual battle. It's for the church to wrap their arms around them, to love them, and to love them unconditionally. Because we have let them down, but there's an opportunity that we've got as in the body of Yeshua to show them that we love them for what they've given us, and they've given us so much. They've given us our Messiah. But it is a spiritual battle, and the church, as I say, the body of the Lord, if we stand as one with them, it's worth it because they are the most wonderful of people.
So Phil and Tim, thank you so much for being my guests on this week's edition of Politics Day. Both done a great job. Thank you so much. And I want to thank you for watching this programme at home. We can't stay silent when we see that a Jewish person can possibly be arrested for breaching the peace because he's Jewish. It's time that the Metropolitan Police Force, together with our government, don't cower to the mob. And we need to send a message loud and clear to our Jewish community that they're not alone in the face of this rising Jew hatred. This is enough, and we've got to stop it. So thank you for watching this week's edition of Politics Today.